Steven, do you have a cat?
I have 2 cats actually. So, and do you want to know their names?
I do.
So, do you know my dog's name?
What is your dog's name?
So my dog's name is Rosie O'Doggle. And I have a cat named Ellen and a cat named Oprah. So there you go.
Hosts of The View.
Yeah, so Ellen's is a skinny gray cat, and Oprah has dark hair.
I like it. I like it a lot. Very, yeah.
It seemed like a great idea at the time to name him that way.
Which one's more energetic? Ellen?
Ellen is way more energetic. Yeah.
Living up to the name.
Yeah, but Oprah's a more cuddly cat.
All right. Well, I see participants starting to kind of filter in here. Ian just posted into the chat there. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, but feel free to enjoy the banter, the commentary until we actually get started here. We'll just wait a couple more minutes. Okay, well, we're getting right close to it. It's just about 11:50 now. I'm sure we'll have a few more people filter in as we go, but I don't know if you want to maybe start by introducing Brian to our group here today, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon or late good morning to everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Stephen Kotkus, and I have the pleasure to introduce my friend Brian McKeever on behalf of the CSEG Foundation Mentorship Program. Now, as you're looking at the screen, you can kind of see some of the accolades that Brian has accomplished over the years. And I just want to kind of tell like a little anecdotal story. So Brian and I went to junior high and high school together. And I remember in grade 10, at the start of the school year, there was like a cross-country running race. And so all the kids got on the bus and we drove to the spot where the race was going to be. And I looked around and I was like, well, where's Brian? And then, we get off the bus and Brian decided to run to the race. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. And so I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to walk fast because if the race is coming up, I want to save my energy for it. Brian pre-runs the race course to kind of get a sense of what it is. Race goes on, he crushes everyone, and then I'm sweating and everyone else is exhausted, and we get back on the bus on the way back to Churchill, and then Brian doesn't get on the bus and he runs home. So I think that there's lots of stories about Brian and his abilities, and I think one of the really cool things is that he was the first Canadian athlete who was able to compete in both the Paralympics and the other Olympics in 2010, and getting 40 medals between Olympics and World Championships. That is an incredible feat. So for the next 45 minutes or so, Brian's going to share some of his story with us. And then at the end of that, we'll have some opportunity for some questions and answers. So at this point, I'll kind of segue into you, Brian, and we can go from there.
Great. Well, hey there, everyone. It's really nice to be here with you. And yeah, it was a real pleasure when Stephen called me and asked if I could come and speak with you. And yeah, as he says, we go way back. And you know, I think my first memory of Stephen is actually in junior high, and was again around running competitions. And I think we have a mutual friend that was at a different school, and so we kind of connected over a guy named Joel Knopf. And I still remember Stephen having a ton of talent. Like you said, he's showing up and not not warming up and not doing any of this stuff, but he's being very modest. I remember track events. He would absolutely crush some of the track events very, very fast. And he and I actually had a really good chat the other day as to whether or not it was nature versus nurture in terms of talent or what we learn. And I think it doesn't matter once we start to measure it. You are who you are. And Stephen definitely had a lot of ability and always impressed me. So it's a real pleasure to get a chance to reconnect over this type of stuff and over the phone. And yeah, so it was very tickled pink to be able to come here and speak with you. So, and on a topic that I think we're all very passionate about, mentorship. And that's, it's an interesting thing. I think, as we start, I'd just like to say like what it is to me, what mentorship means. And for me, it fulfills this kind of desire to pass on the knowledge and the expertise that we've gained in our own lives. And I think mentorship also is this teaching format. It's a much older teaching format than, let's say, contemporary education, in that I believe it passes on sort of more cultural tools that might not be inherent in our education system. So whether that's in a like pure schooling teaching aspect, or whether it's in a coaching aspect, like for me in cross-country skiing and sport, that I believe that it gives a broader picture. And so what I mean by that is that, like in my sport, we get these kids that come into the national team and they are inherently talented, to use that word, I guess, or they have very obvious potential. That's why they qualified for a national team. But it's kind of raw, untapped potential. And in order for them to achieve the highest levels, that requires that more mentorship thing of like teaching them the what's what in terms of the high performance end of things. And so that's teaching lifestyle and teaching good decision making and like all of that stuff that isn't necessarily connected with the pure coaching, training hours, reading a race course, that type of stuff. And so it has a lot of value, I believe, in that, especially when we shape it around something like in a team atmosphere, whether that's a sport team or a business team or a family, whatever it is shaping that culture of what we hope to achieve. And thirdly, I believe that it's kind of a selfless thing. And I mean, not entirely, because obviously we get a lot from being mentors. We get that sort of personal satisfaction of helping somebody else. But in the end, like if the focus is on the other person, is on, who it is that we're trying to help, I believe that, without really expecting anything in return, as much as we might get some value in that, in our hearts, it's about giving that knowledge to the next gen. And I also believe that we're trying to make these guys independent of our teaching. So it's about them, it's not about us. And what that gives is like, it's always nice to be needed, but we want these guys to be fully independent and bring them to a point where they are our peers. And then these guys that we have mentored to that position start to bring in their own ideas and start to bring in their own tweaks on things, and it gets better. And then they surpass us in knowledge and experience. And they can either teach us, or then they teach the next generation to do the same thing. And you know, it's pretty cool. That's how we just keep expanding that knowledge base. And so that's sort of the way that I've acted, and my brother Robin, who's the head coach of our program, that's how we've kind of seen that shift in our sport, in our Canadian Paralympic team. And so I think I'd like to start with, I guess, a story of my dad. And I think we'd probably agree that our parents are our first mentors. And so I'd like to share a few stories of my dad and my first boss, and then kind of shift that into how I've incorporated that into our national team, and sort of some of the lessons that have been there along the way. And my dad is also legally blind like me. It's a genetic disease in our family. So it's a dominant gene, which means if you have it, it's a 50-50 chance of passing it on to your kids. So I won that lottery. My brother doesn't have it. So anyways, growing up in my family, blindness was normal. And it's interesting, we think about what is normal, and normal it's just what we see every day. And if we all were not on Zoom and we could sit here and have a roundtable discussion about what we consider normal within, let's say, each of our own families, we would have slightly different opinions on what that is. And so in my family, blindness was normal. And it was always there, ever present, and joked about. My dad's farm kid, you know, this self-deprecating sense of humor, and he would always talk about himself as blind old Bill. And but he was a great mentor, and he was also a phys ed teacher and a school teacher. And so he taught my brother and I how to ski, how to skate and shoot a puck, like all the normal stuff. And, you know, while the other kids would get in the car and go to the grocery store, we would get on our bikes and ride to the grocery store. And that again was normal. And I would say this stuff became so normal that one day, I'm 12 years old, my dad comes to me and he says, "Hey son, grab your bike. We have to run an errand." Sure thing. So off we go. We get on our road bikes, and I grew up in Varsity Acres in Calgary. So Market Mall's 10 blocks away. There's a hardware store. Used to be. Now it's the Staples. Things change. And I said, "What are we getting?" He's like, "We have to finish the garage. We need 2 sheets of drywall, and your mother's not available." I'm not thinking about it. I'm 12, right? So we ride to the hardware, and dad orders it up, and these workers bring these sheets of drywall out. And I'm starting to think there might be an issue. These guys are looking at us with our bike helmets, and it's all very quizzical. We start hauling this stuff out, and I'm like, you know, he's dad. He's got a plan. I know this, right? He does have a plan. So how are we getting this stuff home? And he says, "Okay, we'll put the bikes like this. You're going to put the pedals down on the same side. We're going to put the drywall on the pedals, and we're going to lean it over, and we're going to push it home." Hey, it's great. Well thought out. Perfect. Dad's a smart guy. Well, bikes don't roll very well connected like that with a lot of heavy weight. So, and it's windy. So we're basically pushing this gigantic sailboat down the road. Very unstable. We're putting holes in the drywall. It's falling on the ground once. Like, as an adult now, looking back, I can imagine what the scene must have looked like. People watching this man and a small boy trying to push sheets of drywall home. And it's ridiculous when you think about it. And even my dad admits, he's like, "That's one time I should have waited for your mother." But it taught me 2 things. One is was how to patch drywall, a skill which I can still use today. It's great. But more importantly was that my dad never let any of this stuff bother him. He didn't think about the fact that he maybe had a barrier. He just figured a way around it. And it was something that, as I lost my eyesight at 18, something that I kind of tried to carry forward, that, I think barriers, they only end up being those if we allow it to happen. Otherwise, there's ways around it. And everybody's got issues, right? Like whether it's an actual disability or whether it's just a mental block, there are ways around it if we choose to expand our, shift our perspective a little bit. And so Dad taught me that. And that's not something that really ever gets taught in schools. And so that shaped how I deal with our national team as well. And with the new recruits that we get coming in, other disabilities, it also helps to make us more comfortable with the people that we are, I believe. People are people, regardless of disability or not. And so we try to teach that as well. So that was my dad. He's still out giving her no more drywalling, but he still skis every day and rides his bike up there. And I think living in Canmore now, it's a great place to be able to do that. Now, bosses end up being a big deal as well. And my first boss, he was a good guy. And I've read somewhere that our experiences with our first boss really shapes our relationship with the workplace as we grow and go into more and more different jobs. And my first boss was incredibly fair. He was a stern, imposing man, but he laughed, just not easily. But it was a bike shop. He was the owner, and at 16, I was a shop rat, and he made everybody equal. So, it didn't matter if you were 16 years old or if you were 46. We were all friends. We were all basically at the same level, and he made himself kind of at that level. He didn't shy away from doing the same work that we were. He would sweep the floor just like anybody else. So, and if you were in trouble, you did something bad, he would teach you why. It wasn't about like firing somebody or sending them home. It was teaching moments. And it's very important to have that trust and that teaching within an environment like that, because as a 16-year-old wrenching on bicycles, if you screw a repair up, you could injure somebody. So the liability is there, and just the human aspect of it. So I remember one of the ways that he did this with me was, I'm kind of shy, again, working in this shop, but with a bunch of adults around. And he says, I sold my first bike. I wasn't much of a salesman. And anyways, he's standing there with the manager, and he says, technically, he goes, he holds this beer out, and he puts it on the counter, and he says, technically, I'm not allowed to give you alcohol. So I'm going to open this beer and walk away. And if I come back and it's gone, it's gone. No, I'm not condoning underage drinking, let's say, but he was responsible. It was in a responsible environment. And what it did was it kind of shifted this so that everybody working there was on this level field. And it was a family as much as it was a place of employment. And that's meant a lot to me moving forward as to how I deal with the guys coming into our team as well. Now I'm the elder statesman. The kids coming into the ski team, they have to listen to me, but I don't want them to feel like they have to. I want them to feel like they want that interaction. And those were kind of like a couple of formative experiences with what I would consider good mentors. And I think it really shaped how I think about it. And like, it also shaped, with my brother and I talking about this stuff, how we wanted to create a high performance program with cross country skiing with the Paralympic team. And we kind of had an opportunity to build it however we wanted. It's small, it's a little less formal. It's no less serious than the able-bodied side, but we were kind of separate. So we didn't have to follow what they were doing. We could create our own. And one of the things that was really important to us was building a strong team, a sense of this community that we work together. And with Stephen the other day as well, we talked about how building a team is kind of interesting when it's an individual sport. That, you know, you're kind of in it for yourself, and yet we tried to shift that and said, well, look, we will be stronger individually if we are stronger as a team. And the way that works, and again, this is kind of, we tried to lead by example. We said the way this works is we get these guys in and we try to help them be better. And it kind of goes like this. If I can help my teammate beat me and he is trying to help me beat him, then we are both winning. Like, we're both getting better by learning from each other. That's not the normal way to look at this stuff. And we are very adamant that we're not competing against each other. Like, the ideal situation is if we go into a World Cup and we're first and second. Like, that's what we want. So the real competition, we want to beat the Norwegians, we want to beat the Russians, we want to beat, you know, the rest of the world, especially the Americans, right? We want to beat the rest of the world. We're not trying to beat each other. So we will support each other. We'll beat up on each other in our hard workouts and things like that. But we take this sense of teammates together to the start line. And, you know, when between gun and tape, you're in it for yourself, but before and after, you're in it together. And that's really created some interesting dynamics within the program. And I think the ones that are really high performance minded gravitate towards that type of a scenario for us. And the ones that don't get it or don't seem to be able to work that way, they have a real trouble, and they sometimes don't last. Some of them just takes longer to shift, but the ones that shift and start to believe in that, they do very well. But that's reliant on a really important point, and that's that you must have trust within that sphere. And so the example of that is Russell Kennedy's a teammate of mine, and he's actually on the able-bodied national team. He's one of our fastest guys. I think he's sort of our fastest active skier. And he came into our program as one of my guides. So I have two guides. There's him and Graham Nishikawa, and the three of us do most of our training together. Now, Russell came in, smiley guy. He's super fun. He's always the biggest smile. Is so big it usually distorts on camera, right? So that's the kind of guy. And great spirit. You always want a guy like that in your program. And he comes in with just this raw ability. I mean, he had so much speed, the ability to win races at the drop of a hat, but also the ability to completely explode or to have these just nasty periods where just nothing went right. And you could see that things weren't necessarily right with his lifestyle, I would say. And so that was something we were trying to teach. And then also the technique. So we're trying to teach him these different techniques and in order to make him better. And initially, I think he was a little apprehensive, like, wait a minute, like, okay, I know we're working as a team here, but we're also racing against each other in some of the able-bodied events. When we're not racing together in the Paralympic side, we're racing against each other on the able-bodied side. And so with Russ, first it was like, wait, you're actually trying to help me be faster. And then I kind of explained it like I did earlier about we help each other, we're going to both get better. And now he's the best skier in the country, and he's repaying that back. And so he's helping me get better again. And I mean, age is against me. I'm 41. He's 30. So he's still coming into his peak, and I'm past it, but I still like to learn. And so I'm learning from him now, and he's passing it on to like the next generation as well. So that's that cyclical nature of this mentorship that I think is really wonderful. And when he bought in, like, he just saw his results start to go up. And even this year at the World Championships, he's better than I've ever been. But sometimes you still need a little bit of a hand. And I happen to be waxing skis and testing for the World Championship. And one of the races, he was a little bit sick before. He took the start. His whole year is based on that. And he dropped out in a 30 kilometer, he dropped out at 12K. And I was in the feed zone giving drinks, and he starts heading towards me, and I said, "Hey buddy, you want a drink?" And he goes, "No, I'm dropping out." So that's crushing. And I could tell that one of the only reasons he dropped out is because he saw his buddy. I mean, he should have anyways. He was having a bad day. He saw his friend, and he dropped out there. And I could tell he'd been trying to do it for the last lap. And it was because he saw me. So most people, especially the ones that don't know him, would have just said, "Tough luck, man. We got other racers to deal with." Well, when you support each other in a team, you don't need to support the guys that are winning. They're fine. You need to support the guys that are having a bad day. And so I put my hand on his shoulder. I just said, "I agree with everything you did today. I agree that you started. I'm happy that you lasted as long as you did," because he needed an effort. If he'd only gone 1 kilometer, his body wouldn't have been ready to race later in the week. So I'm happy that he lasted over 10K. And I'm happy he dropped out, because if he'd kept going, he might have sunk the rest of his championship. And that's what he needed to know. That's it, and he could think about it. And then next day we skied together for 2.5 hours and just laughed and had fun and didn't think about racing. And he had a great rest of his championship. So it really turned around at that point. And he's done the same for me and for Graham, the other guide. We're trying to get him qualified for a different world championship. And he qualified, we didn't. And, we were so pumped for him. And the first thing he said when we crossed the finish line was, "Oh, I wish you guys were coming with me. I'm so bummed." And, it's like, that's him supporting the guys that didn't make it. And, we were just laughing because we're old. We said, "Dude, we're just pumped that we got somebody from our group qualified. Like, we can celebrate that." So we've earned a few beers tonight, and then refocus for the championship. And Nish and I will go off and train for our own para stuff. And that's great. So it's like those little lessons that have gone back and forth. And I think within our program, like, talking about the lessons that my dad brought about disability being normal, we've seen that with our young guys coming in. Natalie Wilkie is one of our athletes, and she's missing most of her hand from a high school shop accident, which you hear it happens, and then when you see it, it's pretty shocking. And she was 17. She came into our program, and she was already a skier, so she's done very well. She's also very introverted, and I didn't even know that she was having issues, but in a panel discussion, she said that one of the things she appreciated most was learning to be comfortable with her disability. She said in the past, she would hide it. She would put it in her pocket. She felt weird about showing her hand. And she said now she has no problems. She'll just walk around, hands out, no big deal, because it doesn't matter. It's who she is. And I thought that was really wonderful that our program had helped to give her that, and her experience at the Paralympic Games had shown her that it was okay. And those types of lessons can't be taught at school. They can't be taught through conventional education. And so, and our other guy, Mark, he's 30 now. So he's also become, we've had him in our program since he was 17. So in 13, 14 years, we've seen him grow from this awkward kid to, well, an awkward adult, let's face it, but a really great guy, and also like with so much knowledge and ability to pass that on as well. And so now he's working with, he's the athlete rep for all of the world's Paralympic athletes in skiing. So he's the athlete rep with the International Federation to, advocate for us, and he does a really good job at that. And he's very comfortable with his disability as well, and with how we interact. And we've made it so normal that we can joke about it. And in Pyeongchang, I was the opening ceremony's flag bearer, and he was the closing ceremony's flag bearer. And there's a ceremony that they have at Canada House with media and with all the families and officials and whatnot, where there's a ceremony of where I pass the flag to the closing ceremony's flag bearer. And they told me I do a little talk, and then I'm allowed to introduce Mark any way that I want. And so I got up on there on the stage, and I gave my talk, and I said, okay, and now I'm proud to announce the flag bearer. He's a Paralympic champion. He's my teammate and friend, and he's Canada's new right-hand man, missing his left arm. And the crowd has this real mixed reaction of people are like, I can't believe he said that. And other people are cracking up. And then Mark gets on stage and he's laughing. He thought it was hilarious. Gives me a big hug, and then he does his own thing. And you could just see that reaction, but how comfortable Mark was with that. And it's fun that he's good, and we can joke that way, and he can make fun of my disability too, and we we're friends. It works. And so I think that's really helped a lot of these guys grow. And so again, Robin and I've talked about it, like, again, creating this team, having the trust that allows all of these things to happen, and then being true to each other in that sense. So genuinely being excited for each other's success. And I think that's worked really well. And then with Norm's lessons too, like on the business side, I've been reading a bit lately that these huge numbers of workers in the world are either unsatisfied, disengaged, or actively disengaged in their work. And I remember that never being the case, say, in a bike shop like that, or in some of the other places that I've seen. And of course, that's my only job aside from a skier, but certainly having had exposure to other people, like my ex-wife and her work, and so to hear that, it's like something like 85% are dissatisfied, and that's shocking, and so it made me think of a company called Patagonia that you may have heard of. They're surfing, climbing, outdoor gear, and Patagonia is has this huge rate of retention of employees, has this huge level of employee satisfaction, and they created their whole workplace around giving people more freedom than normal. Like, so their workplace is on the beach in California. It's right on the water, and they're saying, look, if you're not feeling it today or right now, like, take a break, go mountain bike, go for a run, come back and, reset. And if the surf is good, the whole place shuts down and everybody goes out for an hour or two to try and catch a few waves, including the bosses. And they're super productive. They're very creative. Their numbers are always good. And it's been how they've shaped that culture within their own workplace. And I would love to speak to some of those guys, because I think that for our ski team, we could learn a lot of lessons with how they've created that atmosphere, and maybe also share some of what we've done. I imagine that stuff goes both ways. So I think there's a lot of parallels between sport and business and family life and just how it is. and it's kind of these lessons that we learn from strong mentors along the way. I think that's super important. So just checking the time here. Okay. So we talk a bit about within our group of having this, our own culture of excellence and what that means to us. And it's been built through this structure that we have. And so to me, what we've tried to push is a couple of different things. And one is that teamwork and trust. That's a big one right there. And then the other one is planning and execution. And I like to use Pyeongchang as the example because it's the most recent games. And the teamwork and trust is not just amongst the athletes, but it's amongst the staff, the coaches and coaching staff, the wax staff, massage support, all of this. And the trust is important in that we trust that the staff are doing the best thing for us. The staff trust that we are doing, our best work, prepared, and that nobody micromanages. It's very much understood that we're in it for the same reasons. And so you could start to see it happening at the games, this really strong sense of team, where as soon as somebody was hitting the podium, anybody that wasn't warming up or cooling down or wasn't racing that day was like meeting those guys at the finish line or trying to cheer them into the line or, whatever it was, high fives, hugs, and really trying to celebrate those, but also picking the guys up that hadn't had a great result. And so, again, supporting the guys having a bad day. And then it was cool to watch it because then you'd see the racers running back to the wax room to give the feedback to the waxing staff about whether or not they had perfect skis or whether it was missing something, so the wax staff could then make their adjustments. And then they're radioing out to the coaches on the course for the next category that's going. And it worked like that. And it was really cool to watch everybody come together. And that ended up being our theme in the media afterwards, is like, you're going through the mix zone where you're interviewing with all the world's media. And the theme kept coming up again and again, like, how is it that Canada's doing so well? It was like, well, we trust that we've had the best preparation. We trust that we've done our best job, and we trust with each other, but this is a team effort. We're celebrating. We're so happy with, how these guys are doing. Like, we feel light, we feel joyous. It feels like racing is easy now. And like the work is shared, and it was really cool to see that. And then the planning and execution, well, that part of it, I mean, that how we were racing, how it was operating around the venues, that was put into place much earlier, where Robin had set out, as the head coach, he concocted this plan of how he wanted to build towards Pyeongchang, and like the timing of the training camps and where we were doing our pre-camp. So we do a pre-camp to get over the jet lag, which you hope is close enough. Korea's 8 hours earlier than here. Japan also happens to be 8 hours earlier. You can't go into Korea too early because there's an Olympics going on, and Paralympics are after. So we need a different place that we can go. Japan has snow, and Robin went the year before and picked this beautiful resort that would be very chill, very relaxed, a place that we could get over the jet lag and be as stress-free as possible, but have great conditions to ski, get the finishing touches on the preparation. And then we would go into the stressful situation that is the Paralympics. And it is stress. It's really not a lot of fun while you're doing it. That's work. It's kind of fun after the fact. And but while you're actually going through it, it's really, really stressful. There's a lot of expectation that we put on ourselves and on each other to an extent. And we want to do well. And we've been planning for 4 years to do well. So yeah, the stress level's high. So having that decompression beforehand, I think, is really important. And so Robin absolutely nailed the timing of it and where we would go, the location, all that. And that helps to set you up. And then while we were at the games, then we knew, everything, like when what the schedules were, when the races were happening, when we would be testing skis, when we had to do the media stuff, when you would eat. I mean, that, and how you would get there, because it's not always easy. And all of these things were really, really well planned ahead of time. So all we had to do was show up and then fall into that schedule mode. And I think that's really important. So at least for what we're doing, but it works everywhere, right? Like planning, execution, those two things together, really, really important. So I think that's kind of what I have from my experiences as, a skiing mentor, let's call it. But I would like to leave you with my favorite story from Pyeongchang, because it's one of the proudest moments I have from my whole career, and it has everything to do with my teammates. And again, it's with those lessons of working as a team to have success as a group. And two of our girls, Emily and Brittany, they're in the same category. They're both single arm skiers. Brittany's missing her left arm below her elbow, and Emily has a nerve issue in her shoulder that her right arm doesn't work. So it sits like mine, and I'm carrying mine like this because I broke my shoulder a week ago. So she can empathize, I guess. Anyways, those two girls race in the same category, and they're in the last biathlon race. There are 4 shooting rounds. Biathlon is where you ski a lap, shoot 5 shots, ski a lap, shoot 5 shots. If you do that 4 times, four shooting rounds, 5 laps in this particular race. Every missed target, you have 1 minute of penalties added to your time. And so Emily was skiing faster than Brittany, but had missed 2 shots. So she was already 2 minutes back, even though she was skiing faster. And it just so happened that because of her speed, she had caught Brittany on the course, but had no chance of a medal because of the time penalties. Brittany was sitting 3rd, but really, really tight to 4th place. Like there was just a few seconds between them. One of the Ukrainians was right behind her. And Emily comes out of the range behind her and catches her as they're going up the first climb. And my brother's there, and he gives her the information, Brittany, the information that she is in a really tight fight for 3rd place. And Emily goes around her, and instead of skiing for her own best result, starts to cheer for Brittany behind her and starts to, try and act as a draft. And, I think she made it pretty uncomfortable for Brittany to try and keep up with her, but, would just kept her on the edge of that rope, pulling her the whole way. And we hadn't seen this. We were testing skis on the side, and they were coming down the last hill. We could still hear Emily cheering for her over her shoulder and yelling at her. And Brittany won that bronze medal by 4 seconds, which is really tight. I'm not sure she would have done that without having her teammate support. And it was such a cool thing. I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of those 2 girls. They showed us that not only had they learned the lessons, but they were teaching us just how strong that could be. And so that was cool. That was my best moment of the games, was watching that. And on the way home, I talked to Emily. Brittany was going to the medal ceremony, and Emily was all happy, but I took her aside and just said, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm great. Like, how you really doing?" She's like, I'm disappointed for me, but I'm still really happy for Brittany. And I'm happy if I could have helped in any way, I'm happy that I did. And I said, well, you got one more race and a relay, one more individual race, in great shape. You know you're gonna have good skis. The wax stick's doing a great job. Trust in your, how well you're skiing. And I think like, and take energy from what you did today and how you helped, because that's gonna go a long way tomorrow. And she herself also got on the podium, got a bronze medal there, and was put on the relay team and got a silver. So it, by helping a teammate win, it came back to her, and she was rewarded as well with her own medals. So super proud of both of them. And I hope you are too, because it's a really nice story. And anyhow, I think that's what I got for you. And that's looking like we're 40 minutes in here. I would love to open this up to questions, discussions, see if it goes in interesting ways, and yeah, by all means.
Well, thank you, Brian. I really like those stories. I love sports stories, and they were awesome. And great job. I was laughing, and you probably couldn't hear it. I imagine other people were, and so it's probably really difficult to try and judge a crowd when you can't tell. But you did an awesome job. You really did an awesome job. I'd like to start the Q&A myself, in the sense where in hindsight, I wish I had, other, like my coworkers here to hear your talk. I wish my kids were here. And so if you were going to give some advice to a young athlete, what would that advice be?
So like our talk the other day about, do I believe in talent, or is it nature versus nurture? It doesn't really matter. But the one thing that I do like to say is, so much of this stuff is teachable. It's learnable. It's with given the right advice. And so anything is possible, but you need to learn the lessons for sure. And so with that in mind, like, don't worry about, where you're finishing right now. Make sure you're having fun. That's very important. Sport should be fun. It can be serious, but it should also be fun. And remember that, like, I didn't really develop until I was about 27, honestly. A lot of the lessons that I can pass on now were from around that time. And my first international race as an able-bodied athlete, let's say, was at 27 years old when I made the World Championships in Japan. That's really late. And so, like, just because, wherever you're finishing right now, especially kids, that doesn't matter. So it's about the process. That's the big thing. Enjoying the process, enjoying the sport, enjoying what you do, regardless of where you place. That's always, to me, that's the most important thing. And if you can enjoy that, especially like the friends that we make along the way, and what the activity is, that's super important. That keeps people engaged. Again, that's that engagement piece, right? Being actively engaged in whatever it is that we're doing keeps us in it longer and longer. We learn more and more skills. We get better and better. And you never know where you end up. Maybe you end up being one of the top in the world. Maybe just end up having a sport for life. And both of those things are important.
Thanks, Brian. That was awesome talk. And same as Stephen, I was laughing through the whole way. So thanks for keeping it fun and entertaining. Just like you were saying, is important in a kind of a mentorship group, right? That sense of fun,
for sure,
and support and trust. You said something that was really impactful to me. Barriers are only what you allow, and there's always a way around them. And, I was kind of hoping you could maybe elaborate on that. How do you think a person can cultivate that mindset of not seeing barriers, but seeing opportunity?
Yeah, I think, that tends to be, it's tough, right? Because like, we're kind of taught to see that in society. We see our own shortcomings. We're kind of an insecure group, which is, it's fine. It's who we are. And we see this a lot in sport. I say show me an athlete that claims to be 100% confident and I'll show you a liar, because we're constantly measured, whether it's body fat percentages or, any result, there's a number next to your name and a number after it showing like where you placed, where your time is, exactly how far you are ahead or behind. Like, you constantly measured. Life's kind of like that. Like, we have business metrics, we've got sales numbers, we've got, whatever it happens to be. So we're always measured in some way. But I think, I've kind of gone with this with disability as well. Like, we've been taught since we were this big not to stare at people with disabilities, and which is tough on kids because they're just curious. They don't mean anything by it. And I tell people that the more we make this stuff normal, the more people stop seeing the disability. And so I think in that sense, maybe it's about normalizing the fact that everybody has issues. Everybody has it. And it's like emphasizing that we all have something that we can work on. And that might be, impacting where we want to be. Everybody has that. So when we accept that, then we also allow for growth to go around it and go, okay, that's difficult. Now, how do I move beyond it? Now, can I, and that's where the mindset starts to shift. And it's like, it could be as simple as asking somebody for help. We like to be independent. We also don't like to show our weaknesses to others, but sometimes being vulnerable in that moment allows somebody to help us shift our perspective and see the way around. So, and when we have that trust in our friends, team, coworkers, whatever it is, that it also opens that up to be able to express those concerns or to raise our issues and potentially ask for help, and also to find that other people are going through it as well. And like I said, the Paralympics for me ends up, especially in like my first one, when I hadn't fully accepted what I was going through. I was 22, so that was 4 years. I guess I'd accepted it in principle, but I hadn't necessarily embraced it as being part of who I was now. And going through that and meeting all the other athletes from around the world and seeing, what they were doing, realizing that we all had issues in some way, that it ended up being like this big support group. And there is actually a good story from that kind of emphasizes this. And so my friend Josef Giesen, German guy, he has no arms. Well, he has 2 flippers. They're about this long and they're just enough to drink beer. He was a thalidomide baby, birth defects, and nicest guy ever, just wonderful man. And he was the elder statesman there. And he came to me after I'd won my first medal, and he's like, "I'm so happy you won." And and he'd won as well in his category. And he's like, "I'm so happy you won. This is so exciting. A new young guy on the scene." And great. And I'm giving him a hug. And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I'm pumped for you too. It's great." And he goes, "I could never do what you do." "But you do what I like. We're doing the same thing." No, you misunderstand. "I know you don't see well. It's crazy how fast you're going down the hills and like your technique and all." I'm going, "Wait a minute. This guy thinks that my disability is worse than his. He's got no arms. I can't imagine." And he's going, "Oh, for me, this is no big deal. Like, I can dress myself." And he's like, I have some problems, but it's fine. No big deal. Like, you make your feet stronger and you can do things with them." And he goes, "And I can drive. You can't drive." He goes, "I'm German. If I can't drive, that's like worse than death." And sure enough, we see him on the Autobahn driving, seat all the way back, 1 foot on the gas, 1 on the steering wheel, automatic transmission, probably a good idea. And like 180, 200K an hour ripping there. And we look out the window, we see him, and he looks up and goes. So when you start to see these things, you realize people can get around a lot. They just make it work. And if we're open enough, here's a guy who is missing his arms, is one of the nicest men I know, so adaptable to anything. We start to see that, and then that gets reflected into ourselves as well. So looking for inspiration in those ways, I think, is important, and we can help each other with that.
Well, I love that comment about adaptability and how that seems to be like almost a precursor to success, in a sense. That's huge. Really cool. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. I will say that, there's space here. Oh, we just got one from Jessica, I think. We all want to improve. So in the realm of mentorship, how do you measure if you're supporting others in the way they need to be able to make the most impact? Great question.
Great question, for sure. I think that goes back to having confidence in your own abilities. I think you have great abilities. You have a lot to offer. You have knowledge. You have experience. That's why you're doing this. And I think somewhere in the back of your mind, you recognize that. And so, again, that comes to kind of having that confidence. And to just say, look, these are the things that, like, understand what are some of your core values and what you feel to be important, and just try and pass that on. And I think a big way too is leading by leading by example, and trying to make good decisions in your own work, and that tends to also encompass the people that we are working with. And if we're open to the discussion, people will also come and ask, tell you what they need. And so I think always being able to listen is great as well. So having those things, leading by example, obviously being open to having the discussions anytime. I think those are two really important things. And have confidence in your own abilities, because, like I say, you're a mentor for a reason, and yeah, you'll do a great job.
I just noticed that there is a Q&A portion of the panel. We actually had a couple additional questions in there. First one's from Akshay. What advice would you give on how to cultivate self-motivation?
Yeah, good one. It's that can be hard for sure. And I think for me, it's important to have these big goals. I want to know where I'm going first. And so this is the planning and execution thing. I want to know where I'm going. So it's like, if this is my goal that right now feels really far in the distance, it's hard. I know I can get there, but it's, feels impossible now. But if I break that down into like these points along the way that I need to get to, I can take it in smaller and smaller chunks. And then I can be very present in the process that I'm trying to get to the next, little mini milestone, I guess, along the way. And so for me anyways, I turn it into a process as much as I can. And so as an athlete, it's not about like winning 4 years from now at the next games. It is about breaking that to, okay, identifying my weaknesses in the moment. And, there's these points along the way, but, for now we'll work on this weakness and we'll reassess and work on the next one and work on the next one. And I try to turn weaknesses into strengths. Working on weaknesses is not much fun because we're not very good at it. We like to work on our strengths. It's fun. But when we can shift that mindset and be like, I'm going to turn this weakness into a strength. Well, now there's curiosity involved in it. How do I do that? We generate motivation through things like that, curiosity, wonder, awe. So like finding those little moments in our lives where we can have that expressed. And it can be quite surprising when we start to do things like getting that process working. What's the next step? What's the next step? What am I doing now? And all of a sudden these wonderful things start to happen where you're like, I couldn't do that before, but I can see progress and I'm doing it now. Like, and when you start to get little bits of that, then we get little hits of, these wonderful brain chemicals like dopamine and things like that that keep people addicted to video games. We can do that in our life. We can kind of gamify our process. So I've operated that way a bit in skiing, but I do understand it is a difficult process.
Thanks for the answer, Brian. We do have one more question, and I think that's probably a great place to leave it. It's from Neda. So first off, great talk, Brian. It took me back to my athletic days of being a volleyball player. They say sport is an analogy for life. What advice do you have for those who have made the transition from a job of an athlete to a working professional? The rules are often known in a particular sport, but seem to change all the time when you change employers or work with different people.
Yeah, really good. And I could probably only give you a half answer to that because I'm about to do the same thing in a year from now. First of all, volleyball, great sport. Love it. Yeah, always exciting, fast, and fun, and very, very hard. So impressive. And yeah, I think I have some good friends on the team that are working as well as competing. And they kind of take the same attitudes that they have in their sport into the work environment. So they say it's not always easy because it's sport. There's always very well-defined goals, as in, again, like games 4 years from now, or well, I guess in my case, a year from now. But we were working towards that. And we've broken that down into the steps along the way. Usually by the time we roll into those big things as an athlete, like we've kind of forgotten how we even got there because we were so invested in like the here and now with the understanding that that'll make us better in the future. And so I think, like I say, it's maybe some of those stretch goals are not as defined in the workplace, or they're harder to see. But I know like some of the guys in the team say they can see it in the same way where they go, look, I know where I want to be in this job. And like, how can I find creative solutions to do this? Or, if that is where they're more in, where their brains like to go is like, I need to find a creative solution so that I'm happy in this and work in that space. And other people are like, I need very empirical ways of looking forward on this. And like, I need to see my numbers, working in the right direction. And then how do I develop strategies to make sure that happens? And so it's a bit like the training environment where you're working on basic skills all the time. And I think you can do that as well in the work environment where, like it's sometimes not a bad idea to step back and just say, what am I actually doing here from a basic standpoint? And now expand back out. So potentially using some of those strategies, the lessons you did learn as an athlete, I think it can go that way. And like I say, like I can only give you that half answer because I haven't done it myself, but from my teammates, that's sort of what I'd like to look at is trying to take that mindset and apply it. And hey, I mean, we have coaches as well when we're in sport. And we're talking mentorship here, so it's not a bad idea to reach out to others, and just to be honest about it and say, look, I'm maybe struggling a bit here. Do you have any advice? And sometimes just having that conversation is enough to open the doors.
That's a great answer, Brian, and really, I think a nice way to kind of wrap up a lot of what you've shared today. So I just want to first off start by saying thank you very much for being with our group today and sharing some incredible stories and also some really impactful takeaways for me. I really keyed on to the fact that there's such a focus around community and support and this idea that we can all help one another to be our very best. And I really see that being so foundational for certainly our group as energy professionals and our group as geoscientists, where there is a lot of competition in this space. And yet, if we work together and work to help one another be our very best, then we're all going to benefit. And so I want to say thank you for sharing that with us today. And I also want to thank our mentors and our mentees, everybody that was able to attend today. I hope you got something useful out of it. I know I certainly did. And I hope that a lot of these lessons that Brian shared with us are going to be something that you take back to your workplace, to your pairing, and also to our community that we're trying to build here around mentorship. You know, I think as a group, we've always felt that we want to continue to try and build that community of mentorship and to give back. And so we just really greatly appreciate everybody that is willing to commit this time and put in that extra effort and help generate a next generation of great geoscientists that are going to help answer the questions around what does the future of energy look like. So thank you, everybody. I do want to just share briefly some upcoming events for our mentorship program, and then I'll let everybody go back to their days. I know we're getting close to 1 o'clock here. Let me just pop this up. So obviously we just finished our mentor development workshop, and thank you everybody for attending. We have a couple upcoming events to finish off our official year. Next, we'll be hosting a mentorship AMA with Energy Minute. We're really excited to have the Energy Minute group and come in and be our hosts for a May 19th AMA from 6 to 7 p.m. That's Calgary time. We'll have some information out available on LinkedIn, so stay tuned for that. But we're very excited to have that group come in and host our next AMA. We will also be doing a year-end wrap-up sometime in early June. Stay tuned for details, but we're planning to use the platform GatherTown. And if you've ever had a chance to use that in the past, it's kind of like a digital video game where you can walk around as a little character, bump into people, video chat. There's games you can play. And we just want to get a chance to gather some of our community together and connect and maybe play a couple games and celebrate a good year. And so thank you to everybody for that. And then the last piece is mentorship awards. You guys will be seeing some information coming out in the short term. If you had a great mentee or a great mentor, we want to celebrate that. And every year we highlight our mentor and mentee of the year. So there'll be an opportunity to sign up and to just write a note about your mentor or mentee and give them a chance to win as mentor and mentee of the year, which we'll announce in the fall as the beginning of the next mentorship season begins. So I just want to say again, thank you, everybody. And thank you very much, Brian. This is a great talk, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. We have recorded this, and so this will be available for the group if you want to go back and watch it again. I know I certainly will be. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Okay.
Congratulations, you guys.
Thanks,
Is that
Ian.
all right?
That was more than all right.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
I just wanted to check in.
Yeah, I think it went great. Good job. And
Yeah,
thanks.
it did go great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm glad people enjoyed it. And yeah, it was fun hanging out with you guys for sure. I think what Steven's told me about the group, I love the concept. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, it's so great having, someone like yourself come in and kind of just reiterate how can we be successful? You know, like there's a lot of similarities between what you're talking about, this idea of like teammates and trying to work together, like build a community, build that sense of trust and kind of support one another. You know, those all really kind of hit home as things that we want to continue to do better. And there's some great examples.
I think especially now, right? I mean, we're doing things like this. We can't meet in person the way we would like to. There's less of a connection in that sense. And I think that's really important to try and maintain some of that. So, you know, again, it's what you guys are doing is amazing. I think it's wonderful.
Oh, it was really great. And we did record this. If you're comfortable with it, I'd like to share it with our broader group. I mean, I think we had about
Absolutely
25 people in the room. So I'd love to share it with the rest of our community if you're good.
Absolutely. Is there any chance I get a copy of it too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll make sure I send a copy of it to you. That's great. And we can edit it up, clear out the cat banter at the beginning maybe. And
No. The cat banter has to stay.
I was going to ask if we were going to have an appearance by the cats today.
They did. I saw somebody behind you walking up, Stephen, at one point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll call you tomorrow, Brian, and we can square away some compensation type stuff if that works.
Sure,
And
that's great.
I got a jet